wonderful night for everyone. May it be a night that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has immense openings for people, as you all know, and what we're going to get into is that this night, for most theologians and Islamic understanding, is that most likely is the night of virtue, is the night of importance, is the night of magnificent power. But we'll see what Ubayd has to say about that, inshallah, in a few minutes. So I will say, if it is tonight, then give to Ta'lif, because everything's going to be multiplied. And anyone that gets to say the words La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, because of your ability to give and for us to be there for them and to sustain them and to be in a place where we can listen to them, you get part of that reward. You get a part of that treasure, in which the Prophet ﷺ said that if someone were to come into this fold, come into the tradition, it's through you, it's better for you than, I would think they said 7 or 70 red she camels, which basically means an infinite amount of number of the best mobile, like best vehicle that you can ever think of. That's what it means. That you can, so 70 Lamborghinis, red Lamborghinis. That's
yeah, wrong brand, man. 70
Porsches. There you go. 70 Porsches, which actually means anything, better than everything and anything that you can imagine or attain in this world. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to witness that night and to be there and to come to a beautiful close with Eid, with Ramadan, to witness Eid. And that's the second topic that we're talking about today with Sidi Ubayd. So without further ado, Ubaydullah Evans here with us. Jazakallah khair. Good to see you.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It's a very special honor to be here today. Of course, we're seeking Naltamisu Laylatul Qadr. We're seeking the realization of Laylatul Qadr. It's also the birthday of Malcolm X. We're winding down this blessed month of Ramadan. And, I think much of what can be said about Laylatul Qadr has already been said, but maybe I can reiterate some things. Maybe I can remind folks of some of the things I'm sure they know and perhaps have already heard. When I think about Laylatul Qadr, the thing that it reminds me of the most is, in the same way that we as human beings are not simply a collection of principles. We're not, if someone came to you, tell me, Ali, what is the food that you really dislike? What is your least favorite food?
Khanzir.
Well, of course, pork, right? Pork. What is your least favorite food that you can actually eat?
Man, that is really hard for me to. Man, I like all food. Let me see. I think.
Well, I can go. If you don't.
Yeah. What do you got?
And this is gonna break the heart of some Egyptians. They're gonna say, I don't like bamia. I don't like okra.
That's one of my favorite meals. Forget Egyptians. You just broke my heart, bro. That's one of my
favorite. You like bamia?
I love bamia, bro. I love some okra.
I don't like bamia. However, if you deep fry it, it becomes tolerable, right? But eating like boiled bamia, okra, I do not like okra. I don't like okra. Now, if someone sat, in detail to me, all of the health benefits of eating bamia, right, of eating okra, I probably still wouldn't like okra. It's something I don't prefer. And I think we forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also has preferences, right? It would be, I think, inappropriate to call it a personality, but within divinity, within what Christian theologians call Godhead, God does have preferences, right? Things that, sometimes I think we have to be careful when we are worshiping. We might be worshiping a set of principles. Like, we might think that God is just a set of principles. Like, this set of ethics, this set of principles this is God. But God has a preference. So when we think, why is the month of Ramadan especially blessed? It's just the preference of God. Why are the last 10 days of Ramadan even more blessed? It's just the preference of God. Why is Laylatul Qadr especially blessed to God? It's just the preference of God. And it reminds us that the God that we're worshiping is a personal God. We're not worshiping, like I said, a set of principles or a set of ethics or a set of theological precepts. No, this is a God that has likes, has dislikes, has preferences, right? And so Laylatul Qadr, first and foremost, it reminds me that this is the God that I worship. The second thing that I think is really significant about Laylatul Qadr is, and I was making this analogy, I think yesterday, and I was saying, good students won't know what I'm talking about because good students are always on their business, right? وَلِلَّهِ مَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. Unto God belongs the best analogy, the best similitude that we could ever use could never capture God's majesty. But Allah says, خَيْرُ الْأُمُورِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. The Prophet ﷺ said that the best deeds to God are those that are performed with the most consistency, even if they're small. So for some people, and I've met people like this, they always pray Qiyam al-Layl. They always read from the Mus'haf at night, right? They always pray night prayers. They always read from the Mus'haf at night. So for them, Laylatul Qadr is a time where maybe they do a little bit more than they regularly do, right? That's like the good student that is always completing their homework, is always preparing for their test, is always, making sure to keep track with the instructor of the class. But then you have those other students like me. You know what I'm saying? I joked when I delivered the Zaytuna commencement speech. There were students there graduating summa cum laude and magna cum laude, and I graduated thank you laude. No, but right? You have those other students that maybe there is some negligence in their performance. So in the last month of the term, the teacher starts assigning a lot of extra credit so they can catch up. So I'm going to give a lot of extra credit assignments here for those students that maybe weren't as vigilant as they should have been throughout the term. And then it's like, if you have a really, really lenient, a teacher that really wants students to do well, really wants students to succeed, it's like, okay, I've been assigning extra credit the entire month. But for those of you who didn't do extra credit for the whole month, I'm going to start giving special extra credit for this week. This is the last week of the term, right? And then for those of you who didn't even take advantage of this last special extra credit during the week, I'm issuing one last extra credit project. There's one last extra credit project. So if you've been slacking off the entire term, and you slacked off during the last month, and you slacked off during the last week, I'm giving one more extra credit project that if you complete this project successfully, you can still pass the class. I think about Laylatul Qadr like that project. It's the last look, and it's only an indication that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for us. And that perhaps is a good segue into what is Laylatul Qadr. Now, some people, and I think it was much more common that I would see the term translated the night of power, Laylatul Qadr, the night of power. And that is not without precedent. Many people did translate, Ali, man, you gotta go to the bathroom or something?
No.
Yeah. Or are you doing some tahfeez, or are you? I see you getting your joint together. You know what I'm saying? But some people translate Laylatul Qadr, the night of power, and that's not without precedent, right? but I think I think there are a few more, or perhaps at least two more that are, I think, more accurate. One is Laylatul Qadr, the night of immense value, because God says concerning Laylatul Qadr, "Wa khayru min alfi shahr." It is hiya khayru min alfi shahr. It is better than 1,000 months. Now, mashallah, it's because the number 1,000 is mentioned very clearly. Of course, someone was going to take 365, take 1,000, divide that by 365. Oh no, 12. Divide that by 12 and come up with 83, right? So you have the very precise Muslim that says, tonight is better than 83 years. Right. And mashallah, we love them.
And that's a true statement still. It's a true
Yeah,
statement.
it's an absolutely true statement. Tonight is better than 83 years. And, mashallah, we love precision. We love diqqa. We love tafsir. We love kind of the detail-oriented mind. But I think so as not to get lost among the trees in the forest, right? It indicates that acts of worship, acts of devotion performed on this night, if tonight is in fact Laylatul Qadr, are better than the same acts of devotion performed in perpetuity, performed over the course of one's entire life, right? Acts of worship, acts of devotion performed on Laylatul Qadr are more valuable, contain more merit than the same acts of worship performed in perpetuity. Because if you think about it, 83 years, right? 83 years, right? If you're thinking about it like that, and you probably become mukallaf, you probably become responsible for yourself at 12. So that would be a person living really to the age of 95, right? Because before 11, 12, you're not even morally responsible yet, right? So if you lived a morally responsible life from the age of 12, and then 83 years after that, right? For the person that is very precise, that would be like 95. So if you lived the way that I think about it, if a person lived a very long and fruitful life in worship, in service, in devotion, in charity, they would not be able to account for the same kind of reward for doing a similar act of devotion, service, charity, or worship on Laylatul Qadr, right? This is better than your life. That's a better way to put it. We want to contemporize it. Laylatul Qadr is better than your life. You know what I'm saying? This is better than your entire life, right? So it's the night of immense value. Another understanding of Laylatul Qadr is this is the night of decree. وَفِيهَا يُفْرَقُ كُلُّ أَمْرٍ حَكِيمٍ. It is the night in which the decree of God is concretized. The decree of God is cemented. And in order to understand what it means for the decree to be cemented, we have to understand the relationship between fate as we experience fate and the Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet, right? So you have the preserved tablet is when the Prophet ﷺ said in the authentic hadith, Rufi al-Qalam, the pen has been lifted. He's referring to the pen being lifted from the Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet, meaning that with God, there is no news. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not waiting for anything to happen, right? This is what is understood by his name, Al-Khabir, the informed. Allah is not waiting for something. Allah is not waiting for one to make dua and say, oh man, this calamity was going to befall this person. But since they made dua, man, I didn't know they were going to do that. Right? وَلِلَّهِ مَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. Right? Right? Subhanallah amma yushrikun. So my point is that in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, There is nothing that is news. However, the way that we have, and this is very powerful imagery, and all of this imagery is for the sake of our benefit, so that we can visualize and we can glean understandings from how we are to pray and how we are to live our lives. In the Sama' dunya, fate, in a sense, is kind of dispensed. Things that are going to happen are decreed, right? And when one makes dua, when one prays, you are able to divert, or to avert rather, certain elements of the decree, right? If certain calamities were written not in the Alawh al-Mahfuz, but in kind of a more temporal register of fate, if you make dua, then you can avert calamity, you can avert hardships and tribulations and trials, etc. Now, many scholars are of the opinion that those things that are in that more temporal register of fate, they become concretized. They actually take their place in the Lawh al-Mahfuz on Laylatul Qadr. And so after that, from year to year, it's that. And so people who understand Laylatul Qadr in that way, they say this is a night of dua. This is a night where every wise matter is being settled upon. And so this is the night in which you want to pray for everything that you want. You want to pray for rizqan wasi'an mubarakan fi, plentiful provision that is blessed. You want to pray for the maintenance of your health. You want to pray for the maintenance of your relationships. You want to pray for the deepening of your faith, right? This is the night in which you want to do that. And that's another understanding of Laylatul Qadr. And the last understanding of Laylatul Qadr that I've come across is that because of the enhanced and increased angelic presence that takes place in Laylatul Qadr, it's like the earth becomes depressed, the earth becomes constricted, which is another meaning of the word qadr in Arabic, is constricted, right? The earth, because of the increased presence of angels, becomes constricted with the angelic presence, that there is literally no space for the angels because they fill the entire earth, with their presence. And that, of course, is indicated in the surah when Allah Ta'ala says that the angels and the ruh, which in this ayah refers to Jibreel alayhi salam. So the angels, and then chiefly Jibreel, they descend during Laylatul Qadr, and they populate the earth. And so this is also an indication of how special a time Laylatul Qadr is. Now, the last thing, in terms of the precise time of Laylatul Qadr, it's really quite a story. The Prophet ﷺ was exiting his home, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had just revealed to him the precise day and time of Laylatul Qadr. And as the Prophet, peace be upon him, was on his way to make this announcement to the community, he saw two people quarreling. He saw two people arguing, and he rushed over to mediate the conflict. And there's some indication that, it really required some time to settle these differences. And in the process of settling those differences, the Prophet ﷺ forgot, right, the exact time of Laylatul Qadr. So he said, I was going to tell you the exact time of Laylatul Qadr. However, when I saw these two people arguing, I had to mediate the conflict, and I forgot. Now, the first thing that we take from the stories, look at the great sincerity of the Prophet ﷺ. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. He does not speak from caprice, right? When it comes to delivering revelation, there is no estimating, there is no guesstimating, there is no presenting something as though it were more precise than he really knows it to be. So he says, I don't remember exactly when, but look for it in the last 10 nights. And on particularly on the odd nights. Look for it during the last 10 nights and look for it particularly on the odd nights. So the safest opinion, right, is that Laylatul Qadr could be any of the last odd nights during the last 10 nights in the month of Ramadan, right? So that would be the 21st, that would be the 23rd, the 25th, the 27th, or the 29th. Now, what used to be cool this year, we don't have that going for us. But depending on when, because I think the start date of Ramadan this year was pretty unanimous. I think we all started around. I don't know of anyone who had an alternate start date, but on those years where you always have the controversy about the ru'ya, about the physical sighting, or the hisab, the mathematical calculation, or the telescopic sighting, right? Some people's odds are some people's evens, right? And some people's evens are some people's odds. So it's like, okay, is it an odd night, is it an even night? And so I would always tell people it's best to pray and do those added acts of worship every night of the last 10 nights. Because you'll know it's even, odd. But this year, I don't think we have that dynamic as much as we've had it in years past. You had some scholars that were of the opinion that Laylatul Qadr could be any night of the year. You know, of course, these were the ibad, yani. These are the worshippers that treat every night as though it is Laylatul Qadr, and then you're sure to catch it. then you're sure to catch it. And so you have those various opinions, but suffice it to say, Laylatul Qadr represents a tremendous opportunity for us spiritually, and it's one that I pray we all have either realized already or will realize, inshallah, in the coming nights, inshallah.
When you were mentioning the story of how the Prophet, peace be upon him, was going to say exactly when the day was, but then he forgot. Was there another few takeaways from that story that you know from scholarly opinions?
No, I mean, other than the obvious that fighting in community and arguing is something that you want to avoid, and something that if you aren't careful, the attention that we give to people arguing, it's like تذهب ريحكم. Allah Ta'ala talks about, and there's a difference between understandable tension and differencing, and some of those things are inherent to community. It's impossible for empowered independent thinking adults to be in community and agree on everything, right? But if we don't have a mechanism of dealing with our conflicts, dealing with our disagreements, we end up paying so much attention to those disagreements and those differences that critical things that would be of benefit to us, we end up neglecting. And in this story, it's actually two people that are engaged in a, takhasama. Yani, khisam is not just like ikhtilaf. Khisam is kind of bitter quarreling. It was very contentious, so much so that it demanded the attention of the Prophet ﷺ. And because of that, we don't have the knowledge of the precise day of Laylatul Qadr.
Right. Some say that's probably a mercy for us, right? Because imagine you got really tired and it's Laylatul Qadr and you missed that day. Like imagine what you do with yourself for that year. Like, man, I missed that whole day. I just straight.
It's interesting, man. It's something to think about the 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 mercy that exists in something being obscured, in something not being made clear to you. There's mercy in that, And one of those things is certainly if you missed it, you wouldn't know. You can always hold out hope that you did catch it. It's like, when was Laylatul Qadr? Well, I know, I was, more active in my worship on the 21st, the 23rd, and the 25th. So, maybe, inshallah khair, right? Inshallah khair. Hopefully I did get it, right? I did, hopefully, right? Um, and also, the opposite is certainly true. The inverse, rather, is certainly true, that because you don't know the precise day of Laylatul Qadr, you have to exert yourself on all of those nights. At least the odd nights. You don't have the luxury of being able to say, okay, I'm just going to chill and just watch the Last Dance documentary, and I'm just going. There's no sports on television right now, but catch up, binge watch my shows, and I'll just wait until the 27th night, stay up, read the Mus'haf a bit, make a bit of dua, pray a few non-obligatory raka'at, and I'll feel like my Ramadan was quite spiritually fulfilling.
Yeah, I would definitely be in one of those cats in that boat if I knew the exact thing.
Well, that's part of. Um, I mean, for some people, it's the way that we know about Ramadan, right? You have some people out there that the entire year they're just chilling, chilling. I'm talking about, there used to be there's a saying that, some Muslims you see in the masjid once a week, some Muslims you see in the masjid once a year, and some Muslims you only see in the masjid when you're standing over them making 4 takbir. you know, you know, let's say,
That's rough. That one.
what is that?
I said that's a rough one.
Yeah, right. But you do have those Muslims that really have very little interest in worship throughout the year, even obligatory, even the fara'id. And then the Ramadan comes around, it's like a special outfit in the masjid for Taraweeh, every single night, right? And they stand through the entire Quran, right? They're there from the first night all the way until the Khatam. And I actually don't look at that with disdain. I don't look at that and say, what a person, no, this is, they say that a drowning man will try to cling to a piece of hay. You know what I'm saying? I think this might, rather than look at it as, and you have those hadith about people that worship Ramadan and Ramadan coming on Yawm al-Qiyamah and cursing the action of the one who worshipped Ramadan instead of worshiping Allah. You certainly have those rejoinders, and we have to take heed of them. But I look at it like this person is acknowledging the neediness of their state. That, I know that I don't have much. I know I don't have much, and I know that I'm not particularly dedicated. But this is something that I do every year just to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I know that He's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And I pray that for each person that has that kind of, I would call it kind of an event-based religiosity. My religiousness is based on this event. It's not based on the fact that God is always present, God is always watching, God is always accepting good deeds, God is always reckoning, but it's based on this event, the month of Ramadan. I pray that that will be something from which they can grow into a more overarching kind of experience of the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, and I also take those kind of ways of displaying your religion as honestly an indication to the greatness of that month. Like, look at the barakah Allah puts in that month. Like, look who
MashaAllah.
look who everybody coming out right now.
Everybody coming.
Everybody coming out.
It's almost like, you're Muslim? Yeah, I'm booked it. Yeah. See, you don't know any of the other 11 months. It's like, wait, you're a Muslim? Yeah, yeah, alhamdulillah. And so and that is very special, mashallah.
Yeah, I think that's an indication of God's beauty in that month, and everyone starts coming out. And we, they used to say when you welcome someone, I think this is befitting. When you welcome someone when you haven't seen them in a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't say where have you been? You say how you been? How you been? You don't say
Allahu
where you
Akbar.
been, say,
Allahu Akbar. No, beautiful analogy, man. And when it's someone that you love, um, you're really not even concerned about where they've been. You're just happy that they're with you.
exactly,
You
exactly.
know,
Welcome back.
mashallah. Alhamdulillah, mashallah.
I take that as inshallah an indication for that. I will say though, there's something that's been on my mind is like Laylatul Qadr, man. This night, I've been Muslim my whole life. I've been trying to
Yeah.
seek it out. I've been trying to, you know, trying to at least in most of my years that I remember, trying to find this beautiful night in its true essence at its time, because sometimes at some point when you're trying to learn you get kind of you cling on to things. So one of the things that I cling on is like the signs of that night, the signs of that night, and how do you
Yeah.
know that night? Can
Yeah.
you explain a little bit about that for us?
Well, the signs are subjective signs, obviously, right? Salamun hatta matla' al-fajr. Allah Ta'ala mentions peace until the break of dawn. And so usually, um, one will experience a special kind of tranquility, a special kind of stillness and equipoise that happens during Laylatul Qadr. Um, mashallah, I think it's always, it's interesting. Um, I'm always moved by how Muslims from the majority Muslim world, which a lot of it does tend to be uh, uh, desert regions, um, how they regard rain. Rain is, and you have hadith about mercy and about rain and about dua and things, like that. So this isn't just something being made up, or this isn't just based on the climate of that people are accustomed to. But as a Midwesterner myself, I'm a Midwesterner. You know, I have all kinds of experiences with rain. Sometimes it's like mashallah rain. Sometimes the basement is flooding. Sometimes
I mean,
sometimes it's like
what happened recently all of I'm sorry guys, for those of you guys that are not in the Chicagoland area, forgive us, this is a side conversation, but lower Wacker all of lower Wacker flooded this week.
really.
Flooded, and the river's never been this high in the amount of water in I think record breaking for May in these
La
past
hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-azim. So rain. There's a lot of ways to think about rain for me. But whenever I talk to Muslims, if it's a kind of a still night, it's a tranquil night, and it rains, they're like, it was definitely Laylatul Qadr because it rained. So, I don't know, but I think look for peace, look for a feeling of tranquility, and then if I'm to be straight up, if I can think out loud for a minute,
yes, that's what we want. We just want you to give
and I could be off point because I was just talking about, we're not worshiping principles, we're worshiping God, right? Um, but I do think when the Prophet was if someone stayed awake, especially now, children are at home during the day and we're, working remotely and, any number of challenges that come along with the present moment. And they stayed awake at night because they believed that their Lord especially favored this night. I believe that my Lord especially favors this night. So I'm going to stay up and push myself to do something for his sake. A part of me feels like no matter what night it was, would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not give them what they sought from him?
Right. In the
You know,
yeah, yeah.
it's like would Allah not, a part of me feels like Allah is too kareem. Allah is too generous to deny them what they were seeking from him. So, which is not to undermine, right, that Laylatul Qadr is Laylatul Qadr. It's not to undermine Laylatul Qadr. It's Laylatul Qadr, right? But, a part of me feels like, if one exerted herself just because she thought Allah likes this, I mean, that in and of itself is the merit of the act.
Yeah, the intentions the actions are judged by the intentions, and your intention is for that. Inshallah, Allah will give it to you. We know that in our tradition, many people who will be on the judgment day, and then God brings them all this mountain of good deeds. It's like, I didn't do any of this. Well, that was your intention. So
Yeah, there's a famous story about some king, some ruler, and he was a profligate man. He wasn't very religious, and he was, a man given to his whims and personal passions, undisciplined passions. But one day he saw his army all lined up, arranged in ranks, and he just made a dua and he said, if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam were here, I would have presented this to him that he could. I would have liked to present this to him so that he could use this in whatever way he wanted to, right? And it was said that when he died, someone saw him in a dream, and he was being honored by the Prophet ﷺ, and he was being honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just because he had that intention, just because he just took what he had and just said, man, if the Prophet was here, I would like to give him this. I would love to place this at his disposal. And just through that, he was honored, man. So, I think, many of us have failed to grasp, or it's perhaps very difficult for us to grasp the meaning of God's name, ash-shakur, right? It's like shukr is gratitude, right? It's gratefulness. What does it mean for God to be shakur? What does it mean for God to be grateful? What it means is that what Allah gives you for what you do, there's no mukatha'ah. There's no, there's no, what's the term I'm looking for? Mukatha'ah. There's no reciprocity. Right? The relationship that we have to the favor of God is not a reciprocal one. It's not like God is giving you in accordance with what you do. No, you get so much better. You get so much more for what you do. That is called an expression of shukr.
yeah,
That's called an expression of gratitude.
it's not like a fair exchange.
Fair, yeah, fair exchange. It's not a quid pro quo.
You know? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you know,
You're not going to a
it's not,
currency.
exactly. Trump kept saying when he was caught talking to the Russian official, there was no quid pro quo. There was no quid pro quo. I wasn't saying do this for me, investigate the Bidens so I can give you aid. There was no quid. Right? This is a lot of. There's no quid pro quo. You understand? It's not like you do this and so you get this. No. You do this and I give you, right? You come a small distance and God comes a great distance, right? You come a handspan, he comes an arm's length. You come an arm's length, he comes a cubit. You come walking, he comes with speed.
Yeah.
And that is what we mean by, a shakur.
So now some of the merits, I know you said that, Laylatul Qadr, and we're going to be shifting to Eid soon because I know that people want to hear about that too. But Laylatul Qadr, one of the things that come to me in that is like, Inna anzalnahu, right? It was talking about the beautiful words of God that were descended down on that night. how do we understand that type of dissension? Is it all at once and from where to where, or is it like all at once to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or is it up in the sky still somewhere? Like, um, what is that? What does that mean?
It's interesting because we are a generation of people that are not really connected to a real metaphysics. We're not really connected to a real metaphysics. So when we talk about the cosmos, our default is to think about the natural environment. So if you say the Quran was revealed from the preserved tablet to the Sama' dunya, to the lowest heaven, people are thinking, so the Quran was suspended in the ionosphere or the stratosphere? What exactly do you mean by that? And and I get it, and it's not to I say this not to belie science or scientific understandings. Science has given us uh, great benefit, and no Muslim, I don't care how traditional, should feel that they're engaged in some kind of fideism by disparaging science. We're not. That's not a part of our. That's We're not a fundamentalist tradition in that way. That by disparaging science, we're somehow showing that we're true only to God.
Right.
But you have to have an understanding of phenomena that is richer, that has more in it than just the natural scientific realm, right? It's not, it's like sky means so much more than just that layer of gases above us. Like that's not when I invoke the sky, okay, like think about it like this, Ali. Think about like when someone says poetically, look to the sky, look to the sky. What I understand by that is someone that is reading that verse, look to the limitless firmament, meaning it is not simply, like I said, that those layers of gases that are above us, right? No, it's representative of a ma'ana. It's representative of certain ma'ani, right? Sky as representative of uh, limitlessness, of fawqiyya, aboveness, of um, transcendence. You see? So the way that we understand this is that the Quran was with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then it was sit down, right? And don't think, again, by saying sit down, don't conclude from that Allah is up. It's just that up represents even, okay, when you say that, you see somebody engage in certain conduct, and you say, man, I just thought that they were above that, right? You don't mean that they were like, and somehow, their sea level or elevation.
Like they're physically above that. Then it's not like a
No, you mean, you by that you mean mutanazzih.
no.
You mean mutanazzih. You mean there's something about them that is above that, because space and directionality, it accounts for more than just physical directions, right? So the Quran is sent down. In this case, being sent down is an indication of mercy.
No,
It's
no.
not an indication of a spatial reality. It's an
Like that,
indication of,
like that rain and Laylatul Qadr, like that rain.
right, exactly. It's it's sent down, right? It's revelation is sent down. And then over the course of 23 years, it's sent down from Baytul Izzah, which is just a way of talking about where the Quran is after it's sent down, right? even, and I think that is to highlight or to underscore that even as the Quran is sent down, it's still protected. It's still protected. And then over the course of 23 years, right, there you go. You don't download a PDF from the sky, right? Over the course of 23 years, the Quran is dispensed to the Prophet alayhi salatu
Right.
right? So,
And was that first revelation that was descended, was that to be known in our tradition on Laylatul Qadr? The first time that it's given.
there's difference of opinion about that. Some people say that inna anzalnahu fi laylatul qadr is not a reference to Surah Al-Alaq, right? It's not a reference to Surah Al-Alaq. It's actually a reference to the entire Quran, going from the preserved tablet to the Sama' Dunya. Some people say that it's a reference to both the entire Quran going to the Sama' Dunya and the angel Jibreel alayhi salam contacting the Prophet alayhi salam for the first time. So the opening verses of Surah Al-Alaq.
Right, right. Well, that's really good to know. So, I mean, in Laylatul Qadr, I know this is going to come up maybe in some questions, so I'm being preemptive before we transition to Eid, which is like,
you're making me nervous. You're making me nervous with all this rocking, man.
I'm just vibing, you know. I'm just vibing with you. That's all. That's it, you know.
Rock with me, maybe. Rock with me.
That's a different conversation. That's a different conversation. But what's people ask this all the time, and I see the benefit in it, but uh, I have a little something to say after that to that. But I'll ask you first: is um, what's the best act of worship that someone can consume themselves in these nights? And if you believe that you're encountering Laylatul Qadr.
La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Dhikr, remembrance broadly. Dhikr encompasses many things. The recitation of the Quran, awrad or litanies, dua, tafakkur, contemplation, salah, qimu salah li dhikri, establish the prayer for my remembrance. So dhikr, broadly stated, I think is the best thing that you can do during Laylatul Qadr.
No. Do you have yeah, so like one of my teachers recently said something really nice, and I just wanted to share it in reference to Laylatul Qadr. Actually, a few of the teachers said this, a few different teachers. One of them, and this is kind of to go back to what you were saying, full circle, is like, Laylatul Qadr is given to the Prophet ﷺ. It was given to the Prophet ﷺ and his ummah as a gift, right? As a gift, and it was revealed to us to have that in mind as a treasury, as a gift. Like, like you said, like maybe you didn't do anything this year, but you have this extra credit point, where it's like, we're going to get you over that hump this year, right?
We're going to get you over.
Yeah, we're going to get you over that hump. And so they said that, the main thing to understand is everything that you do as a Muslim or believer should be knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there and always around. And Laylatul Qadr should be a night that brings you to that understanding, that like even beyond that night, you have that type of awareness that,
Yeah, that is the understanding of the ulul albab, the people of innermost core, or the people of ulul absar, the people of penetrating insight. Whenever someone is showing you favor, it's never about the favor, but it's about the one showing you the favor. So if you experience someone's great generosity on a special occasion. There's a special occasion and a person or someone extends to you great generosity. One way of looking at it would be it's about the occasion, that, it's just about the occasion. And that if I am always present for that occasion, I can look forward to these kinds of gifts because I know that this person is generous on this occasion, or I know that this occasion calls for this kind of generosity. The other way of looking at it is that this occasion is important, clearly, but it only highlights the generosity of the person that always exists. I mean, the generosity of the person was there yesterday, before the day of the occasion, and it will be there after the day of the occasion. So rather than just waiting for the occasion, I could just appeal them for their generosity all the time, right? And because it's always there, right? Which is, it's interesting. I mean, when you think about forgiveness, right? من قام رمضان وقام ليالي إيمانا واحتسابا غفر الله ما تقدم من ذنبه. Whoever fasts in the month of Ramadan and stands at night in prayer during the month of Ramadan, faithfully and seeking a reward from Allah, Allah will forgive all of their previous sins. Now, one way of looking at that is that it's about Ramadan. The other way of looking at it, it's about Allah. And if Allah is possessed of this kind of goodness towards you, why would you want to disobey him in the first place? Right? But وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. All of us are just weak. All of us are just weak.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to witness it this Ramadan and everyone that's viewing. But we're going to take a quick shift now. We have that beautiful night that we might have already witnessed, or we might witness tonight, or we might witness the days after. Hey, y'all, after the 27th, it's still Ramadan. Don't be don't be halas, 27th, I'm chilling the next 2 days. Don't be like that, all right?
Which happens too,
Odd night on the 29th too, right? So you never know. But the beautiful day that comes after that, the day of Eid, which just like this Ramadan, it's been a little bit different in the past. This Eid is going to be maybe, I think, where most people actually feel it more, because Ramadan, it's good to retreat in Ramadan. It's known to be something of that nature, like to just step away from everyone. But Eid, that's different.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, created in pairs, and things are known through their opposites. This is just a sunnah of God in his creation, that things are created in pairs. So there's man and woman, or woman and man. There's night and day. There's light and darkness. There's rest and exertion. There's qabd and bast. So there's qabd is not consternation, but contraction. Qabd is contraction. And there's bast, there's expansion. And in life, we're naturally, there's ni'mah and there's ibtila, there's blessing and there's test. We're always, there's usr and yusr, there's ease and hardship, and we're always moving in and out of them and between them. We're always, that is really
maybe
life.
Maybe that's why I'm doing this all day today.
There you go. You're moving in and out of the cup and the bus. It's like I'm garbage. You're garbage. Yeah, boss. You're garbage. Yeah, boss. You're garbage. Right? I mean, that's the rhythm. That's the rhythm of life. One of my elders, older brother, just very wise and very witty. He would always say to me, the nature of life is that you're either coming out of a crisis or going into one. You know what I'm saying? It's just, that's the rhythm of life. Similarly, we see that Ramadan is this time of heightened devotion, And it ends with 10 days that the Prophet ﷺ would spend i'tikaf. You know, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she mentioned that he would tighten his izar. You know, he would really, which is an indication of staying awake at night. Like he would really like it's time to grind. Like it's really time to go hard, right? But after that uh qabd, that kind of uh, 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 contraction, you know, kind of really exerting oneself and going hard. Eid comes as this day of bust, this day of expansion. It's kind of like, you know, when you see a marathoner and the way that the arms triumphantly raise as they're crossing the finish line. Whew, you know, that, you know, the tension, the constriction, the quite frankly, the pain of running for that length of time is then accompanied by this release of spontaneous joy. I did it. Woo! Right? And so Eid caps off Ramadan in that same celebratory way. Woo! I did it. And it feels good. There's a kind of effervescence that accompanies Eid. You feel bubbly. It's almost like, you know, my cereal. You know, my wife always makes a breakfast. Actually, if I said my cereal, she would be like, "Oh, you really gonna eat cereal this year?" you know, you know, my breakfast never tasted like that. You know, I mean, I can't. It's almost like I'm in disbelief as I'm eating my pancakes. Like, I can't believe I'm eating breakfast.
Am I supposed to do this?
You know what I'm saying? It's like I can't believe that I'm eating breakfast and it's light outside. You know what I'm saying? The sun is up. You're right. Um, and so Eid is intentionally a day of celebration. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Hada yomu aklin wa shirabin wa bi'an." This is a day of eating and drinking and family, right? This is you know, I mean, there's a beautiful hadith in which Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha is playing with the tambourine in the house of the Prophet ﷺ, right? She's, you know, playing with the tambourine. You know, it's the days of Eid, right? We're happy. She has a tambourine. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he enters the house and he's mortified. You're playing with the musical instrument in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, Aisha, you are tripping. And so, you know, you really do this Eid, but you tripping. And so he admonishes her. You know, mizmar, yani a musical instrument in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet says, "Yeah, Abu Bakr, we did not expect this from you." Meaning, we didn't expect you to come in reprimanding people. And we don't like this. Subhanallah. We did not expect this from you, and we don't like this. Relax. Abshiru, be happy. These are the days of Eid. Right? So that's Eid. For me, that's the hadith that kind of sums it up. It's like, dude, take a chill pill. Relax. This is the release of spontaneous joy. These are the days of Eid, right? So, you know, Eid is supposed to be festive and celebratory and devotional. You know, usually this year might be a little different, but usually there's Salatul Eid. You know, there's a khutbah, which is where you get to see who really cares about hearing what you have to say, because, you know, no one has to stay for the khutbah.
It happens afterwards. Yeah, it's the inverse.
It's different than Salatul Jumu'ah, where you have a captive audience. People are, you know, remaining for the salah. They don't really care what you have to say. Whereas the Eid, the salah is first, and then the khutbah is after that. You know, once, you know, my first speaking engagement, after I finished at Azhar, someone asked me to give the khutbah for Eid al-Fitr, for Eid. And I didn't know the etiquette of preparing, you know, an Eid sermon. So in the 55th minute of my khutbah, somebody stood up in the back of the auditorium and said, Habib, please just say Eid Mubarak so we can go home. Bro, that really happened, man. And you know, and when I think about it, of course, a part of me was really offended. Like, yo, you know, there were some brothers that friends of mine that were with me. I'm not gonna say where I was, right? I was way outside the city. And I looked at them like they were sitting in the first row. I was like, yo, dude, you disrespected me in my khutbah. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's like, yo, hey, don't disrespect this khutbah. And then I looked around, I looked at everybody else's face, and they were like, has been a lot. Yeah. And I was like, Eid Mubarak. And everybody got up.
I didn't know that.
But you know, when I think about it, it really prepared me for my, you know, undistinguished career in the Muslim community. You know what I'm saying? You know, but no, you know, I mean, Eid is supposed to be a time of celebration, you know, a time of devotion, but a time of celebration. This year, you know, Eid will be different, you know. Shara'an, you know, Salatul Eid is sunnah, right? It's a sunnah. There's no compelling reason to make it via satellite. It's not, you know, there's no compelling reason to do that. If someone does, however, I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't know. It's weird how I think a lot of these issues, it's like we're talking about one thing, but I think we're talking about another thing.
Yeah,
So
I feel you 100% on that.
you know, it's like I think for some people, an issue like, you know, COVID becomes a, you know, a place of kind of validating the tradition, that, you know, the tradition does give us guidelines that we are to use when confronting unprecedented situations. And so for them, if somebody makes salah or makes tarawih via satellite or, you know, via some, you know, communications device, it's like this huge violation of, and my thing is like, yes, it's not necessary to do that. And I probably wouldn't do it. But if somebody did that, I mean, do we really believe that what Allah Ta'ala is going to punish them? I mean, you know, this was a nafil. This was a non-obligatory act of worship. The person, you know, living through a global pandemic, attempted to, you know, realize the blessing of this non-obligatory act of worship in whatever way they could, and they prayed Salatul Eid with some friends via Zoom or something like that. I don't understand what would make that something like a flagrant offense. Again, I mean, there certainly is no compelling, you know, there's no compelling.
For me, on the other hand, I'm like, oh, I guess we don't have to pray. We're good. That's me.
Which honestly, you know, it makes you think, man. You know, it's something to think about. I mean, you know, it's that hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It's a hadith Qudsi. كل عمل ابن آدم له. Every act of the child of Adam, of the son or daughter of Adam, has a personal share in it for them. Meaning there's something, you know, they get something from it. Illa siyam, and then you have one riwayah, they get rewards, right? There's ajr. From ashra أضعاف إلى 700 إلى 700, right? 700 until, you know, 700, you know, rewards. But I'm thinking about it more like, you know, how much of our prayer is like, yeah, we do it for the sake of Allah, but we also get there's something personal that I want. Like there's a kind of
normalcy that you feel, you know?
Normalcy. There's normalcy. There's you know, in the same way, I guess, that people that engage in other kinds of spiritual exercise that aren't doing their spiritual exercise for Allah, people that meditate, people that maybe do yoga, people that take long contemplative walks and things like that. These are things that they would admit provide them with a certain balance, equilibrium. It means like, yes, it helps me to connect, but it also helps me, right? And thinking about how much of our worship is of that sort, that it does something for me. And I think that the fiqh tradition always challenges that, because what if an act of worship just is not wajib for you? Or it's like, this is something that you are relieved of. Like, you don't like, it's like the person that never has the money to make hajj. It's just never, this is not something you have to do, right? For this is not something you have to do. Or the person that is never in good enough health to fast in the month of Ramadan. It's just not, and they don't have money to do fidya. So they're not in good health so that they can fast, and they don't have money so that they can do fidya. It's literally not a part of your, it's not in your dhimma. It's not in your, it's not a part of your responsibility.
Yeah, and nor fall against you in any way at that point.
In any way, shape, or form. So in the current, situation, although some places are beginning to open slowly. If someone wanted to hold a small Salatul Eid with 10, 15 people, you certainly have the flexibility within the legal tradition to do that. But if most of our centers and masajid and collective spaces are not holding congregational prayers, then it's just simply something that we don't have to do.
I got two questions for you. One,
Bismillah.
what would the Prophet used to do, and the people around him and others, what did they used to do, or what's known a part of our tradition to do on that day, right? Besides maybe just the prayer itself, what's known there. And then the second question that I have is, what makes that day so special that we celebrate in it, uh, besides the outwardly known fact that we just finished these days of Ramadan? Is there anything else?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, when you look at a time of celebration, times of celebration are occasioned by gift giving. That's the main. It's really the main thing. Tahadu wa tahabu. Give gifts to one another. Eating. Celebration is often accompanied by eating, socializing. That is what the kind of the festive activity of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, in terms of devotionally, this was the time in which the Prophet ﷺ would encourage people to give in sadaqah. Give. This famous and very controversial hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. But when you think about it, and I remember listening to Dr. Maryam Shaybani talk about this. Mashallah, a very deeply learned scholar, and also just she presents very well, very accessible, really cool, really down to earth. I've benefited from her lectures and some of her work. But she said, this famous and very controversial hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he is reported to have said, the majority of the inhabitants of hell are women, right? And he said, and he was encouraging them to give charity, right? Give charity, give in charity, give in charity, give in charity. Because I've seen that the majority of the inhabitants of hell are women. This was actually on the Eid. This is on the Eid. This is on the day of Eid. I don't know if it's Eid al-Adha or Eid al-Fitr, but this is on the day of Eid. And Dr. Shaybani, she said, the idea that the Prophet ﷺ would say something like that on a day of celebration, if he were not being sarcastic, is unthinkable. That the fact, like the asbab al-wurud, right, the setting of this hadith, right, actually gives an indication that the Prophet ﷺ was joking with them, right? Was joking with them, and then continuing on to say, an-nisa naqisat yani aqlan wa dinan, that women are deficient. That this was the Prophet ﷺ actually joking about how influential and how much influence women had over men, actually, right? But on that day, the part of the hadith that we're focusing on, the Prophet ﷺ, went to them and exhorted them to give in charity. And many of the women who had dressed very finely for Salatul Eid and they were wearing jewelry, they began to take off some of their jewelry and to place it with Bilal. Bilal was standing with the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet encouraged them to give charity, and they began to take off bangles and bracelets and rings and earrings and give them in charity. Good luck trying that in a Muslim community now. No, actually, astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Our women are just as charitable, mashallah. Are just as charitable, mashallah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remember days in like one of the mosques that I attended back in the day, and right away I remember the sheikh being up front asking for men for some, it's one of those between the tarawih. SubhanAllah, we didn't experience that this Ramadan. Like between the two, usually between the 4 rak'at of tarawih, somebody stands up asking for money. And I remember like the men being completely quiet. And
yeah.
all of a sudden, the women and somebody in the back raised their hand. They're like, this lady just gave all of her jewelry, right?
All
right.
I think at this point, man, I think it's an open secret that Muslim women are holding the ummah down, man. We're Muslim men, we're all qarban. It's over, man. It's over. It's a Muslim men. We just, I don't know, we're in a bad way right now. But I think our women, mashallah, they're holding us down, mashallah.
Yeah, so we were going. The second question was like, what would the Prophet do in Eid? You said to give gifts, right?
Give gifts, give gifts, give charity, lots of socializing, lots of eating. It's a time of festivity. We don't lose it. There's still prayer. There's still acts of devotion. Man, Ali, something just changed about you. Actually, what? Yo, man, look, what happened?
What happened?
SubhanAllah. You're all of a sudden you have a tan.
No. I had to flip from laptop to phone because my laptop died. So I thought I could do that seamlessly without anybody figuring out. But you got me.
In terms of the spiritual significance of Eid, in terms of the spiritual virtue of Eid, like we would talk about the spiritual virtue of the last 10 nights or Laylatul Qadr or the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. I don't know. I've never come across anything in terms of what's happening in the unseen. Or I think if I've encountered anything, it's that the heavens also rejoice. The heavens also rejoice for the believers who, in a sense, moved a step closer to becoming the inheritors of paradise.
Yeah, and what I know of that's missed by myself many times, and I just recently learned about a little bit, is that that night of Eid is actually a really powerful night. That night of Eid is known to be a night you can stay up and worship as well, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and His Prophet ﷺ used to hold that in extreme importance as well. And
MashaAllah. Well,
that's
I didn't know. I never learned that. MashaAllah.
yeah,
Jazakallah khair.
you know.
Jazakallah khair.
But guys, I didn't go to Azhar. Y'all double check everything I say, guys. Double check.
No. Actually, one of the the coolest thing about studying at Azhar was that yes, we had a muqarrar, we had course reading that we were responsible for, but when you were answering a question, if the question was related to Islamic law or Islam, of course the answer is much broader. The correct answer is much broader than whatever we covered in the course reading. So it's almost like you could actually test the proctor or the one grading the exam to say, are you really just asking me if I memorized what was in the book? Or are you asking me about this question as it relates to our deen? Because, of course, it's much vaster than anything that can be written in one book. You know what I'm saying? So studying Islam, it's humbling because it's not like, if you study one thing about something, you've encompassed. No, I mean, there's lots that I don't know. But Islam is much vaster than what I know. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I stand up and I talk about what Allah Ta'ala has allowed me to learn, what has been a part of my rizq in terms of learning. That probably doesn't even scratch the surface of what's out there and what can be said about Ramadan or Laylatul Qadr or Eid or so. I really think that we have to move to this place of holding our sessions in the model of maybe one person is facilitating, but we're all there sharing, man. If anybody else has anything that is on the call about Eid or Laylatul Qadr that they want to index into the conversation, by all means, they're welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And now, since we're mentioning the people on the chat, I'm gonna move to some questions in the next few minutes that we have. If you're okay with that.
Bismillah.
Let me see if I can access the Q&A from here. Yes, I can. So there was one person asking, what may I do in Ramadan or in these nights, especially these next to last nights of Ramadan, if I cannot pray and I cannot fast. So I'm assuming that the sister is on her cycle. That's what I'm assuming. She didn't say that no, but I'm assuming that if I cannot pray and I cannot fast and I cannot recite the Quran with the Mus'haf or whatnot, what can I do on these nights?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's interesting. One of the things we have to remember about Laylatul Qadr is that we're not there just to act. It's not, I think, we tend to talk about Laylatul Qadr and we talk about, what can one proactively do to earn the favor of God. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Laylatul Qadr, He talks about the angels descending. He talks about Jibreel alayhi salam descending, and he talks about peace, right? And he talks about the Quran, inna anzalnahu fi laylatul qadr, the Quran being revealed, on that night. So a lot of what we have one of the ways we should think about Laylatul Qadr is we should think about receiving on Laylatul Qadr, not just what we're putting out there in terms of our deeds, in terms of our prayers, in terms of our recitation of the Quran. Just to be present, to be awake with an attentive heart, open to receiving the gifts that God is giving on that night. So just to be a present, it's like, what can you do? Just be awake. be awake, be in a state of contemplation, be in a state of dua. And that might be the best thing that any of us can do. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Just, I think that sometimes we're often confusing times of activity with times of receptivity. Just like it's a blessed night. Just be open to receiving. Just be open. Just have a kind of receptivity to the favors and the nafahat of rahmah, the divine winds of mercy that are present during that time. Just be open to them. So I would say to my sister, if you're not praying at that time and you're not reading from the Mus'haf, of course, in the Maliki school, you can recite whatever Quran you know from memory, even on your cycle. That's not a problem. But if you're not praying, you're not reading from the Mus'haf, you can make dua and just be present. Just be present. Just breathe, be present, and be open. Try to be contemplative, try to be reflective, on that night, inshallah.
I love that. I love that. We got another 2 more questions, inshallah. I understand that Eid is a celebration, and I have seen some celebrations that seem very excessive with multiple meat dishes. I'm not vegetarian or vegan, in parentheses, and just a lot of food. I know we can give extra food to the poor, etc., but it is considered poor stewardship of animals to make 3, 4, or 5, or 6 meat dishes for Eid instead of 1 or maybe 2, and then plant-based dishes and sweets to round out the celebratory meal or the Eid meal.
Bismillah. For us, it's very difficult to talk. It's very difficult to compare our diets with that of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. It is not an overstatement to say that they were semi-vegetarian. They just, the accessibility of meat in our time is really without precedent. Man, you have people now that regularly eat meat multiple times a day. I mean, there are people who consider a meal inadequate if it lacks meat, like meat for breakfast, meat for lunch, meat for dinner. So yes, when looking at kind of the fundamental imbalance of our diets with regard to meat consumption, Eid just looks like the ne plus ultra of that. It's like it's even more imbalanced. But when we talk about the Prophet ﷺ, and we talk about the celebration that ensued on the day of Eid, yes, people ate meat, and probably more than they regularly would, because it was Eid. I think that's been a common thing. I think the difference is that more than they regularly would was probably a moderate amount, but more than we regularly would is an excessive amount because our norm is excessive. So it's not really about how many meat dishes we prepare for the day of Eid. I think it's just coming to terms with a fundamental imbalance that exists in our consumptive patterns. The way we consume as Americans generally is probably just imbalanced and not sustainable. And so Eid just becomes a microcosm of that larger trend. To talk about what we're doing on Eid and not talk about just how we're consuming generally is probably a case of making a mountain out of a molehill. It's like we're just talking about how we're consuming for Eid. Look, that's a part of it, but the larger issue is it good stewardship to just consume in the way that we've been consuming? And it's not just related to meat; it's related to, everything from natural gas to electricity to meat to textiles to, you name it.
Right. I agree. And now for just unfortunately the sake of time, I think we're out of time. I know there's more questions, but forgive us. Inshallah, uh, what we'll do is ask Sidi Ubaid to close us out with a dua. Since we're a few minutes from breaking the fast here in the central time zone, meaning like half an hour or so. Like you're looking out to see what time is it? But yeah, Sidi Ubaid, تفضل Sidi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. يا ربي يا أرحم الراحمين، إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا رب العالمين. O most merciful of those who show mercy, truly you are Kareem, you are generous, and you are Al-Afu, you are the pardoner. We ask you to pardon us and to accept our fasting, to accept our praying, to accept our charity, to accept our deeds of service, Ya Rabbal Alameen. This month has been uh, um, referred to as the month of mercy, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and we are certainly beseeching you for your mercy, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And we acknowledge that in our disobedience to you, we might be the least deserving of your mercy, but we are the most in need of it, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And if you deny us your mercy, we will have no recourse. We recognize that there is no fleeing from you but to you, Ya Rabbal Alameen. We are all present during this very difficult time. We're experiencing a global pandemic. We ask you for safety. We ask you for security. But most importantly, we ask you for a means of rujua, of returning to you, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And we openly profess our negligence. We openly acknowledge, rather, our negligence, and we profess our absolute love for you, our absolute need of you, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And the last thing we pray, we end with what we started with, وَصَلَّى اللَّهُمَّ عَلَى سَيِّدِنَا مُحَمَّدٍ وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ وَسَلَّمَ. We ask you to send your choicest blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family and his companions, and all of those women and men who adhere to his way until the day of judgment. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen.
I mean. Thank you, Ubaid. Thank you for the rest of the folks that were on. Please support Talif in any way that you can. Tonight's the 27th night. Inshallah, it's a beautiful night for everyone as they try to seek out Laylatul Qadr. And may we all reunite together very soon in a space physically. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow Sidi Ubaid to continue the work that he does. And may Allah bless him and his family and bless all of you that are on. God bless you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi. Yes.